Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, stop this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. Everybody in this context refers to us and our cats. You are free to feel however you want about Rand. He's a fictional character. Please don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
Well, friends, another week passes in Crossroads of Twilight.
Romans countrymen. What's with this book? It's
I don't know.
Tilted.
It has gone through some trials and tribulations.
Just like me reading this book. This is Everybody Hates Rand, your friendly neighborhood Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Emily Jushaw.
And I'm Sally Goodger.
Oh, look at that.
I know.
I love it when that happens. I mean, I don't love it when that happens, but it's pretty
funny. Yeah.
When the book has some, like, weird breakage on the inside where the spine is. Okay. Anyway, we're back with Rand. Sort of, obliquely.
He's there.
Yeah, we get 2 chapters, and one of them is, like, partly from Rand's point of view. But mostly they're from Cadsuan's point of view, which is, as always, a trial and a tribulation, unlike any other we've suffered.
Yeah.
And we're with the party, the same party that did the whole cleansing on Sidon.
Yeah.
Like, mopping Sidon.
Yeah, you just had to get up there and clean it off a little. It was dusty.
It's one of those Mr. Clean magic sponges. The party is recuperating from their, big to-do.
Mm-hmm.
At a random manor house, which we are told is, like, pretty close to the big mountain range, but within the boundaries of Tyr itself.
Mm-hmm.
So also
like
pretty close to Loyal's steading
Shangtai.
And this manor is owned by a guy named...
I think it's Algarin.
Yeah, Algarin. Algarin, who, like, just to keep an eye on the moving target, I guess. Lord Algarin expresses interest in this section to being tested to see if he can channel. We find out his tragic backstory is that he had a brother who could channel, who Cadsuan herself gentled, and rather than that being a major tragedy in which the brother, just died immediately after, it seems that he lived for some time after that. And so Algarin has a positive view of the experience because it meant he had more time with his brother.
Right.
And his brother being in his right mind. I'd probably feel less obliquely about that if we knew how his brother eventually died. Like, did he still die by suicide just 10 years later, or did he, like, have a heart attack,
Yeah.
It's a bit confusing. But, back to the original point, which is that Algarin wants to get tested. He will, in later books, although it won't be very, this is like a sub plot. He will find out that he can be taught to channel, and he will go to the Black Tower, and then he will assume a pseudonym, and then under that pseudonym, he will be part of the Black Tower plot. How anyone is meant to keep track of this, I have no idea, but just so you know.
What's his pseudonym?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Why would you assume a pseudonym?
He just has a fake name, I guess, because he's, like, a minor lord and doesn't want to be associated as, like, a nobleman or something.
Fascinating.
I don't know. It's all from Androl or Pravara's points of view, and they're just like, this guy is clearly a nobleman.
You can tell because they act a specific way.
They also are like, and he's clearly gay. And I'm like...
So is that motorcycle.
So is that motorcycle. I'm just like, poor Brandon Sanderson fumbling blindly in the dark for a character minor enough that the conservative Wheel of Time fans wouldn't be outraged or would miss it entirely.
Yeah. And
also enough of a character that the rest of us would just thank him for the crumbs that he's scattering to us. It is fairly obvious to me that Robert Jordan had no concept of this character being gay because it is referenced that he has children, and I don't believe Robert Jordan has a nuanced enough idea of sexuality to understand that a gay man can still have biological children. But that's just my little soapbox for the day.
Yeah, what a mess.
I know, right? There's so much in this little nut of a character.
There is a lot. It's a lot to unpack there, and perhaps we will when we return to Algarin in the Black Tower. But
if we remember.
If we remember who the fuck this is. The whole thing is so silly.
I also think it's funny that, like, all of the gay Wheel of Time men, as far as I know, it's just this guy and, like, one Borderlander dude who Lan references obliquely, also in A Memory of Light. They're both older men.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
And I just think, I mean, it's a very small sample size, obviously, and that's the point. But also, like, it is interesting that we are presenting gay men in such a way that they can no longer be threatening.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. Like, it's very interesting, as though it's something safe about being like, they're gay because older people are no longer sexual.
Virile.
You know? As though it's impossible, you know, for them to have sex lives. But I think more to the point is, like, yeah, they're not threatening in that they're not actively going against what you're supposed to be doing when you're young, which is finding someone of the opposite sex to then, if we're thinking of sex as a binary, to then marry and have children. They are not threatening because they are not pushing against that, particularly in Algarin, whatever his case, he's done that. So in some way he's fulfilled some sort of duty, almost.
Yeah.
It's just, this way to make them unthreatening and irrelevant, kind of, which is really sad because, one, you know, older queer people are not irrelevant. And also, like, we shouldn't... Gay representation involves queer people of all ages and other identity factors. It almost just doesn't count that Brandon Sanderson was like, oh, you can have this guy.
Yeah, because it's like the idea is, by mainstream romance standards, these men are too old to fall in love with other men or whatever. Which is, of course, patently untrue.
Yeah.
People fall in love at all ages, and, like, there are plenty of, like, gay elders.
Yeah.
Older people who are very much a vibrant part of the community.
For
and, like,
sure.
showing up at pride parades and whatnot. And also have, like, extremely vibrant sex lives. Many of them the same way that any subset of any group does. So it's all just, like, ridiculous that it has to be sanitized in a way that is only sanitized when you're coming at it from a heterosexual cisgender point of view. Anyone outside of those points of view would be like, what? I saw an 80-year-old dude in bondage gear at Pride last year. You know, like,
they're there every year, and they're the pillars of our community.
They are the pillars of our community. God. These are the dudes who survived the Reagan administration.
Yeah.
Which, Jesus, few of them did.
Yeah, no small fucking feat. And they are extremely important and lovely, and I am so grateful that they're there every year. Usually being like, fuck the police.
Yeah, because they know.
Yeah.
They know.
They know!
So anyway, just like this week, pour one out for our gay elders.
Yeah,
and all that they've done for us, and, you know, be like, in the privacy of your own head, don't harass real people. Be like, Brandon, could have done better.
Could have done better on that one.
Could have done better.
Friend.
At the very least, the two gay old guys could have found each other and smooched.
Yeah, that would be pretty iconic.
That would have been pretty iconic.
And be like, here's this random borderlander nobility or whatever. And
The only thing they have in common is that they're both gay.
Yeah,
but that's enough.
We sound like ants, like your conservative aunt. I have a coworker who's gay.
Oh, I literally know one other dude in this 14-book series, each book of which is 600 pages. That's gay, so maybe you guys would make a cute couple.
Maybe you guys would really get along.
Yeah, you know?
Apparently they're the only two gay men on the planet, so their options are quite limited.
Well, Robert Jordan is much less shy about making allusions to lesbians, which I think is very funny, so... But only because he can then be like, all Aes Sedai are lesbians in some way because they're all power-hungry.
Yeah.
And as we all know, all power-hungry women are lesbians.
Naturally.
Natch.
Obviously.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton, huge lesbian. Margaret Thatcher,
Huge.
a gay icon.
Yeah.
I need to memorize that quote about, like, was it girl power when Margaret Thatcher did war crimes? Queen Elizabeth, a lesbian.
Ugh.
Have you heard about the queue? The fucking gigantic line to see the Queen's body or whatever? I just think it's so funny.
Have you heard about the queue?
People are just making really good jokes about it.
I have not heard about.
People have given birth in the queue. The queue is like this eldritch thing that will last for centuries.
I love it. I love the idea of a sort of a line.
Yeah, you get in line and you're like, what are we in line for?
Yeah.
Like to see Queen Elizabeth's body. She died 900 years ago.
Yeah. The idea of a sentient line sort of embodying the human horror of waiting around.
Yeah. Write it, Stephen King. Write it.
The Queue by Stephen King.
It, too. The Queue. Clowns in sewers? Bleh.
Boring. Lines? Having to queue up for something?
The existential terror is...
Do you think you get a number when you join the queue to see the Queen's?
Yeah, it's like the DMV.
You have to pull a little ticket. You're number 4,700,000 to see the Queen's body.
Yep.
Is it just like in the streets of London or whatever, causing all sorts of havoc?
It sure seems like, based on the fact that England as a country grinds to a stop when a monarch dies, and I don't mean that as any shade on any of the actual English people, all of whom I know are like, this is so stupid and our economy is crashing.
Right.
But, you know, the powers that be in England are like, we have to be reverent towards dead political figures.
Yeah.
Which isn't a thing. Once you enter politics, you concede your right to be treated with respect upon your death.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a sort of level of, once you enter politics, you have to accept that you are no longer quite human in the way the rest of us are.
Yeah, you are the body politic, as it were.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you should be treated horrendously, necessarily. It depends on the decisions you make. Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell! His grave will be public urination stand.
I hate
Remember?
that man.
Fucking perish. Okay.
The Queue.
Speaking of people I hate and whose graves I want to piss on, Cat Swan.
Cat Swan is there, sort of ominously staring out a window at a thunderstorm, as if the metaphor could get any more heavy-handed.
And, like, peasants working in the thunderstorm. Yeah, she's legitimately like, oh, these poor fools. He's doing back-breaking labor in the rain and the cold. And I'm like, okay, at least they're contributing to society, unlike you, parasite. God. Anyway, Katsuan is doing all her usual bullshit, but all that happens is that, like, Varen comes in and is like, hey, I just dropped off the sea folk, so at least we've gotten rid of that part of the faction. Yeah. God knows they shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Yeah.
But Hareen and her sister have been dropped off in Tyr because they are anxious. They, like the sea folk in Camelin, have found out that the last mistress of the ships died, and so they're off too.
Yeah.
Reconvene with the rest of their people to find out who the next mistress of ships will be. Unfortunately, Min had a viewing that Hareen herself would one day be the mistress of ships. However, her viewing also included the fact that Hareen would be punished very severely for her
bargain with
Rand, as opposed to the Sea Folk, who made a bargain with Elaine and Nynaeve, and who came off very well in that bargain. So it's very obvious to us, the readers, that Hureen will maybe one day be mistress of the ships, but likely Zareen, or whatever her name was, will be first. Not that it matters, because the Sea Folk do not matter in any tangible way in this series.
Unfortunately.
Anyway, while Varen was in Tyr, she got a glimpse of the political situation there, which is that Tyr itself is sort of in this, like, weird siege thing, because the government is in shambles, because Rand abandoned it.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna be a running theme. Oh, Don't you worry.
Don't you worry. We're just gonna keep circling back. Oh, things fell apart as soon as Rand took over violently and then just left.
And then was like, a peace.
So that's a real shock to all
real
of us.
Head scratcher how that happened.
Anyway, Darlin, God bless him, is trying frantically to keep things together with some assistance from the various Aes Sedai, who are themselves Rand's representatives. Varen was under instructions not to let them see her, though, so blah, 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 blah. Min tells Cadsuan that Rand wants to see her. Cadsuan's like, great, goes out to see her. They run into some other Aes Sedai who accosts Varen. The only point of this that Cadsuan makes is that Varen is rebel-aligned, and although I don't think Varen ever really was.
Yeah, Varen is an independent agent as far as
Varen
I'm concerned.
is a fucking enigma.
Yeah, Varen has no alliances. She's subject to no one's authority.
Yeah, which, like, good for her.
I know.
Cadsuan, by the way, with this, like, very condescending tone, is like, I know so much more about Varen than she's letting on. Like, she's not that good of an actress, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, do you know she almost poisoned you last book?
And God, I wish she would.
And God, I wish she had. If only, like, you know, minor poison.
Yeah, to just like make you have a really bad tummy ache.
Yeah, God, I wish Varen would do that. Anyway, in Cadsuan's mind, Varen is rebel aligned, and this other woman, Nisoon, is White Tower aligned, and she's like, oh, it's so weird how they can just, like, get along, you know, talking about brown Ouchies. Well, I don't know if Nisoon's black Ouchies.
I mean, at this point, probably.
It's 50% of every Aes Sedai body. It's black Ouchies. Anyway. Ugh. She's like, they can just talk about dead snakes or whatever. And I'm like, that's because dead snakes fucking rule.
Yeah, so, dead snakes would unite all of us if we could all just
talking about
look at dead snake skeletons or whatever.
And also just like, Cadsuan's like, wow, people get over their political differences when they have bigger things to worry about. And I'm like, yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, like, the impending apocalypse is, like, a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and, like, neither of them is really there by choice.
Yeah.
You can both, at the very least, people are always going to be united by having a shitty boss, which you are, Cadsuan. And above you, Rand, also shitty. Anyway, Cadsuan is traveling towards Rand, which takes seemingly forever. She enters this courtyard where all of the warders are, like, sparring and whatnot. In this case, it's Narishma and Lan. And we get a reference to how the Aes Sedai who bonded Eben, R.I.P., died in the battle cleansing of Sidon. So, of course, his Aes Sedai is all sad about that.
Yeah.
But Cadsuan's like, oh yeah, Nynaeve's here. I fucking hate her. She's so stupid and immature, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, why do we even have your...
What is the point of this commentary?
I know, what the hell?
One other thing I want to note here, because it just, like, upsets me to no end.
Oh, the whole medallion thing?
Yeah, Narishma is, like, very visibly upset and keeps asking Lan, basically, to, like, beat his ass, because he wants to win. Cadsuan's like, whatever. And Maurice, I think her name is. It's like, yeah, Narishma's really upset because I took his little pin that the Ashman get when they get raised to soldiers or whatever. I don't remember the ranks. She's like, I took it because he needs to learn that he can only accept things that I give him, not anything that Rand gives him.
Yeah, Rand, very justly, after this big battle, was like, Narishma, you have very much earned your spot.
Yeah.
Like, you have advanced in the Ashman ranks, and Narishma, being a very young man and also a very cult-minded man,
Yeah.
unfortunately at this point, is like, fuck yeah, a very visible reflection of my achievements
Yeah.
and position. I want that.
Yeah.
And Maurice is like, oh, no, baby, you can't have that because I'm training you like a dog
Yeah.
or like a toddler.
Yeah.
And it's like, or also like a cult. Like, it's just all very manipulation, brainwashing, not a healthy, like, partnered relationship at all. It's very gross to think of Maurice treating her normal warders this way, let alone Narishma, who's an Ashman. It's gross that this is sort of just par for the course amongst Aes Sedai and warders.
Yeah, what we're, if we could jump, as we'll jump around a little bit, but what we're getting in these 2 chapters, basically, what happens after Rand and Cadswan talk about seemingly nothing, is that, surprise, Logain and Davram Bashir are here, like, the 2 most confusing travel
very
companions.
strange duo.
Yeah. And with them comes the news, finally, to Rand that Ashman at the Black Tower have bonded Aes Sedai against their will.
On Mazrim Taim's orders.
On Mazrim Taim's orders. And so what we're kind of seeing in these 2 chapters is, like, the conflict between Aes Sedai and Ashman coming to a head a little bit. Like, so far they've been, except in few certain instances, such as, like, the group of Aes Sedai with Rand bonding, like, 3 or 4 of the Ashman, and Mazrim Taim bonding, I don't know how many it is, quite a few, but is relatively an isolated incident at that moment. But up until this point, they've just mostly been sort of, like, revolving around each other as these 2 magical bodies. And suddenly in these 2 chapters, we see the beginning of this, like, clash where it's like you can no longer revolve around each other. You have to, one way or another, integrate, because that's going to be important, basically, in the last battle. More or less. And also important to sort of the moving forward of the world, because the other option is for you guys to basically just go to war with one another. And it is deeply unfortunate that what happens is not like, what am I trying to say? So I don't necessarily want to, like, place the blame on Robert Jordan for this, because I think it is a very accurate depiction of what happens with people trying to get power over one another. I think it's very much, we are taught that you never want to be the one who has power over them. You want to be the person holding power over another person. You never want to be the person who got scammed. You want to be the scammer. So I think it's very accurate that both the Aes Sedai and the Ashman are sort of clamoring to be, quote unquote, on top.
Yeah, there are these power play dynamics at work here in which these 2 groups, like you said, are colliding, and so of course what's going to happen is they are constantly vying for the position of power over one another and enacting that in individual Aes Sedai warder or Ashman Aes Sedai bonds.
Yeah. It's just, like, so upsetting, because there's, like, such a stage here to set up a different type of relationship in the Wheel of Time world, and Rand is supposed to be this sort of creator of new systems. Like, he's destroying a lot of things, but he's also, like, setting the stage for new things to emerge. So it's just, like, it upsets me so much how this is a missed opportunity for, like, figuring out how the Aes Sedai and the Ashman could actually, I know ultimately this would require Wheel of Time world to be fundamentally different on, like, a sort of molecular level, but it's so upsetting to me that it's not like, let's figure out how we can actually be in partnership with one another and how we can actually work together without this sort of who has bonded who and who is in charge of who. And essentially Rand is like, Egg is going to get to bond as many of the Ashman as you bonded Aes Sedai, because it has to be this sort of, like, tit for tat.
Which is exactly what happens.
Yeah, let's balance ethics on a scale of who has as many toys. You know, it's just, like, such an upsetting dynamic. There's no actual work put into forming partnerships.
Well, and it's clear that, like, Brandon Sanderson also saw this as an inherent problem that needed to be solved. whether Robert Jordan himself saw this as an issue or whether he just was kind of like, this is a continuation of something that, I don't know, thematically the world is still messed up even when the world ends, or maybe Robert Jordan didn't see it as a problem at all, maybe he saw it as comedic, but like clearly Brandon Sanderson was like, okay, this is a problem, what we have here is an opportunity for people to actually like create partnerships.
Right.
Which is what he then enacts with, again, an individual set rather than on a systemic level with Pravara and Andrel, who have their own relationship problems, I hasten to say, but that was clearly what he had in mind. But then, of course, that's incredibly frustrating because it's very, very obvious that, like, that wasn't necessarily part of the original blueprint.
Right.
And that's just sort of something that's going to be coming up a lot as we get into the last few books in this series. Some things are very clearly coming from Brandon Sanderson. Some things are more ambiguous. Some things were clearly written, like, and set in stone by Robert Jordan. And just the reality that, like, the series does become worse, but also becomes better when another author, like, lays their hands on it. There's just something very uncomfortable about that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, I agree with you completely. It's very frustrating that what we eventually see enacted with Andrel and Pravara isn't happening about 6 books earlier.
Yeah.
It's very confusing to me that what we have when Robert Jordan is trying to show things on a systemic level, what he has is always, okay, if I'm going to show something changing, what I'm first going to show you is 9 examples of people sticking to the prior system, and then 1 person changing it.
Yeah.
You know, we see about 1 million people telling Nynaeve she can't heal gentling before she does it.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. But it's like, you're the author, Robert Jordan. If you tell us that something is the status quo, we'll believe you.
Yeah, it's, we hit on this, I think, a little bit a couple episodes ago, but it's like almost a, like, expectation in fantasy these days that the world will be set up one way, and we can just kind of believe that is the case, and know that it is going to ultimately change because that is what happens in stories. People are taking action, so we can know that at the beginning of Wheel of Time, people expect male channelers to be bad, but ultimately we will see that that is not necessarily the case. Like, that is, we're talking about, if we talk about the horizon of expectations, which is what your reader sort of goes into anything expecting to happen, that is a very set, that is like the Wasatch Mountains that I can see out my window. They're not going anywhere, and that expectation in fantasy is also not going anywhere. And you can use that to your advantage by being like, I've given you one example to sort of set the ground, and then we can start playing with how we're going to change it.
Yeah, what Robert Jordan did with The Eye of the World was set the horizon of expectations, and he set it very clearly, and I would say very intentionally, as prototypical fantasy world.
Yeah.
That's why it calls back so much to Tolkien, the sort of like blueprint for fantasy, and why so many of those tropes are enacted and fulfilled.
Right.
Of course, he added in his own flavoring. Okay, there's this like group of the Vatican extra powerful women. Gandalf is a woman.
Yeah.
There are these very obvious gender dynamics here at play, which we would normally be paying attention to because there are no gender dynamics in Lord of the Rings because there are no women.
Yeah, it's irrelevant.
Like, so yeah, of course we're paying attention to that. You have set the stage, Robert Jordan. Now it's your job in the next 13 books, if that is how long you judge it will take.
Yeah.
To change things.
Yeah.
And not just like I seriously feel like I've been tied to a wagon or something and I'm being dragged along to a slow death. You know? It's just terrible.
Yeah, it's just like we keep harping on this, but we're in book 10 of 14 and it doesn't feel any different than it did on like of course many things have happened, but like ultimately the societal flavoring of the Wheel of Time world does not feel any different at all than in book 1.
Yeah, I reject the idea that we're still harping on it. Robert Jordan is still harping on it.
Fair enough. You got me there.
And we're just still saying the same things we've been saying since the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's a 14-book series, guys, so
we should be it should be not even resembling what happened in book 1 by book 10 if you are truly going to drag it out over 14 books. I should have been seeing the world 10 years later at this point, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
whatever.
it's just, like, I know to, like, bring it back to this, like, very small moment between Maurice and Narishma, but it's just such, like, a perfect microcosm of what's happening. And then, yeah, Cat Swan goes to Rand, and Rand's like, you gentled Algarin's brother, and she's like, I will not deny it, because I'm a demon straight from hell. And I'm very proud of the fact that I tortured many men in my centuries-long career
blah,
at
blah,
the
blah,
White
blah,
Tower.
blah. Just one more on my fucking list.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden a bunch of Aes Sedai burst in and are like, my warder that I inexplicably left in Cairhien for reasons unknown is about to be here.
Yeah, as you alluded to, Rand and Cadsuan have a conversation that actually is not a conversation because nothing of substance
Yep.
passes between them. Cadsuan believes, because Rand starts to bring it up, that there is something to be done there about the Shanshin.
Right,
Because
right,
Rand's
right.
like, I'm having trouble figuring out what to do about the Shanshin. Before Cadsuan has the chance to actually do her job and advise him, and in fact, I don't think Cadsuan, like, ever in the fucking series advises Rand.
Yeah.
Which makes it incredibly frustrating that they've had all this back and forth about her being an advisor and filling that role for him.
Yeah.
But the few times Rand actually goes to her for advice, she either doesn't get the chance, or purposely doesn't, or fucks up so badly that he, like, rejects her out of hand. So, like,
Yeah.
guys. Again, same old things, same old story. But yeah, these Aes Sedai are like, oh, we left our warders, again, for some reason, in Cairhien, and now some brilliant person has hit on the idea that, like, they can use the warder bond to trace where we are. So
Right.
they're on our way. They're on their way. And everyone's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And of course, it is this group of people who we saw disparately in the prologue of this series, Logain, Bashir, and Loyal, accompanied by their various coteries. Rand and Min first meet with Loyal, do some catching up with him a little bit. Rand, by the way, is still quite sick
Yeah.
physically. He expected the nausea he was feeling whenever he embraced Sidon to go away once the taint was gone. But as we discussed in the last book, and we also said that there is no textual evidence for this really, so if you didn't know this, not your fault.
Yeah.
But that's because his sickness is a result of whatever happened with his Balefire crossing with Moradins. It has nothing to do with Sidon itself. And Rand's sickness is getting worse. He seems to be having some nausea even when he's not channeling.
Right.
So just things generally are getting worse for old Randall Thor. He's also in his own head, meshing more with Luz Thurin. I think there's also an allusion here to the idea that maybe he's meshing slightly with Moradin. Rand has like this little philosophical thing about, I don't know, leaves on a tree and the crater and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, that's weird. I never think that deeply. And so is it Luz Thurin? But Moradin, who was Ishmael, was like a philosopher in the Age of Legends.
Right. I think we could also argue that perhaps Luz Thurin never thought that deeply.
Yeah, Luz Thurin is a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
What does he say in, like, Path of Daggers? Like, the only way to keep a woman safe is to put her in a cage, like an evil eagle or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, Luz Thurin's a big fucking dummy. So, yeah, if you're having any, like, deeper thought, Rand, it is almost certainly coming from Moradin.
Yeah. Who has many flaws, but at least he thinks.
Yeah, which leads to some troubling thoughts about how much they are meshing
Yeah.
in their personalities, but that's a subject for another time, perhaps. Anyway, they catch up with Loyal, who reports on how he and Carlden went to almost all of the steadings, except for steading Shangtai, because Loyal's afraid of going there.
Yeah.
But he's like, don't worry, I'm sure they'll get the news. And we're like, please guard the way gates. And most Ogier were like, yes, sure. Some of them in, like, the borderlands were like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Which is confusing, because that seems like a very human thing to do, to have, like, regional differences
Right.
in the Ogier steadings, but...
And also, I feel like the Ogier and the... Sorry, that was my nice pack. The Ogier and the Borderlands have more reason than anybody to be like, yeah, we understand why that's important.
Yeah.
Living as we do, near the Blight.
But yeah, that is exactly everything that Rand is going to do about the Waygate problem.
It's like,
Cross
check.
that off his list. Is it enough? Absolutely not, but it is done on the Rand al'Thor Conquer the World to-do list.
Oh my god, maybe I should make a Conquer the World to-do list.
Oh, yeah, you should. It would be great.
Number 1, fix the queue.
Fix the queue. The queue, the reckoning.
Too cute, too furious.
Loyal, there's some gender dynamic blah 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 about Loyal and Aerith and
I feel like it would actually be
and whatever.
Q fast, Q furious.
You're right.
I made a mistake, and I would like to apologize.
How dare we?
Okay, sorry, continue.
At that point, Loyal also tells Rand that Logain has come with a bunch of Aes Sedai because the Ashman bonded them against their will. We then cut over to Cadswan so that we don't directly see Rand, with steam coming out of his ears as a result of this announcement. And Cadswan's basically like, oh, well, that's a pretty big deal, but sort of inevitable, Da-da-da-da. She's got a very laissez-faire attitude about it. Samitsu, who we also saw in the prologue, is there reporting to her. And Samitsu's like, yeah, I really don't hold any power anymore, because Sishal just pushed me out. And Cadswan's like, I don't care, go back and watch her.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
that's
great.
your job.
Yeah, I, again, still do not care about the power dynamic between Samitsu and Sishal. We will, at the end of this chapter, just cutting back to it, but we'll get a point of view from Elza, who is the dark friend in Rand's bosom.
Yeah.
The Black Aja, who has been mind-fucked into also swearing fealty to him.
Yeah.
Her warder, who caught up with her, is also a dark friend. Of course, they have the usual torture each other dynamic of two dark friends locked in perpetual combat with each other. I don't know, but basically, he's just like, sorry, it would have seemed weird if I didn't go with them. And she's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
This is just a reminder that Elsa is a dark friend.
Yeah.
In case we forgot.
In case we forget.
Then we switch over to Rand yelling at Logain. He's like, how could you do this? Notably, he's not like, what a huge invasion of privacy, one that I myself have suffered.
Yeah.
I actually have a great reason to be angry about this, which is that this is a violation that I have experienced, and I can champion the rights of these women.
Yeah.
Is that what his problem is? Absolutely not. His problem is, I don't want war with the White Tower.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, like, both of those things can be your problem. You can be like, this is upsetting on a personal, like, human rights violation level, and this is upsetting on the political level that you could have just done a very big diplomatic ouchie.
Yeah.
Like, both of those can be correct, but the fact that he's like, fuck the rights of women, I don't give a shit about that at all.
This is a big diplomatic boo-boo, though.
Yeah.
How
this
dare you?
Big diplomatic owie. I have a big boo-boo with the White Tower.
And Logain is like, this is so sad because, as we've said many times, we hate Logain.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
But Logain is the only one coming to Rand and being like, what do you expect?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah, Logain.
How are you acting like this? Are you surprised? You fucked off. Yeah. None of the Ashman know what you look like.
Yeah.
It's just Mazrim Taim up in there. It's the Mazrim Taim show. Or it's the late night show with Mazrim Taim.
The late night show. The daily show.
We're all just stuck in the carpool karaoke with Mazrim Taim and doing what he says to us. And what he's saying to us is violate the rights of human beings, do war crimes, and lie.
Yeah.
And, like, you're not exactly in there editing the curriculum, good buddy, so what right do you have to tell me that I fucked up?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, Logain, you did fuck up, ultimately, as the Geneva Conventions and many, many, many historical events have proven. You are still responsible for your own actions, even when given orders.
Right.
But Logain, he has a point, Rand.
He totally has a point. And he's, like, I hate having to be like, Logain is right. That makes me sick to my stomach.
It's like, I don't want to say Gareth Bryn's right. Yeah. I don't want to say Logain's right. But if he's the voice of reason in this,
he's truly just like, he's like, you have to come back. Mazrim Taim is telling everyone or letting everyone assume that we're doing this on your orders. So you are going to gain a reputation if you do not come back. And Rand's like, literally not my problem.
Yeah, he's like, here are like 6 red flags in a row for you.
Yeah.
Mazrim Taim has included the Ashman that are with you personally as traitors on his little hit list.
Yeah.
Mazrim Taim has a group of people who are basically like his posse, and they don't care, and it's all of the high-ranking Ashman. He's clearly got cult shit going on. And yeah, he's giving orders speaking for you that clearly you didn't okay. And Rand is like, I don't care, I want you to negotiate with the Shanshan. And Logain very justly is like, are you insane?
Yeah.
And bestie, I don't know, because maybe this is meant to be showing us that Rand is insane, because there's no justifiable reason that a reasonable person would not take this into account.
I know, on the, like, subject of Rand's insanity, like, we keep having these moments where it's like, Rand is behaving so irrationally that, like, you could feasibly make an argument that this has to do with, like, the status of his mental health. Unfortunately, I do not believe this was Robert Jordan's intention, because Robert Jordan very much leans into the idea that insanity is always violent and always going to be deeply uncomfortable in some sort of, like, visible way.
Yes.
Like, Rand is always going to be talking to the voices in his head, or breaking things, or losing control of side, and, like, all of these things that are ultimately, like, basically a stereotypical insane person. He's never, doesn't, I think, have a nuanced enough understanding of the idea that sometimes insanity and irrationality come out in moments like this, where you are just not making logical decisions, and you just are not operating within the realm of reality. So perhaps to Rand, if we were, like, giving him a sort of more full form of madness, could be like, I do not view the Black Tower as a problem, because in my reality, the Black Tower barely even exists.
Yep,
you know?
I have written it off.
Yeah, like, that could be a totally feasible way to explore this. But again, I think Robert Jordan very much puts moments of Rand's madness in these very visible, violent, over-the-top sort of things. I think truly Rand everyone is supposedly supposed to be, like, prioritizing the Shanshan over and over and over again. It's the Shanshan, it's the Shanshan, it's the Shanshan, and the rest of the continent could sort of fall apart. So what we get is just, like, Rand's incompetence and his inability to recognize that he has literally multiple countries worth of people that he can delegate to, and just refusing to do it. Speaking of bad middle managers, that was the theme last week.
Oh, yeah. Rand is probably the worst manager of all time.
Yeah.
As also, Bashir is like, oh, I'm just here to report to you that there was an assassination attempt against me and against O'Brien, almost certainly because someone's after the seals on the Dark One's prison. And Rand, again, is like, not my problem. Here's what I want. I want the 3 of you, Logain, Bashir, and Loyal, to go as diplomats to go suggest a negotiation with the Shanshan to meet with me. Why is Rand choosing these 3 people? It would literally seem that it's because they're the 3 people in the room with him.
Yeah.
Not for any, like, personal merits that they have. He doesn't even know Logain. This is the first conversation he's ever had with Logain. Loyal, as he in his own head said just, like, a few pages ago, is still by Ogier standards, like, a teenage boy.
Yeah.
Bashir has enough on his fucking plate. Why? And yeah, you're right. It's like, it would be such an easy thing to say, oh, it's probably because he's not making rational decisions, because clearly he's struggling with insanity. But it's highly doubtful that that was Robert Jordan's intent. What is probably just happening here is that Robert Jordan thought that the Shanshan were the biggest problem to take care of.
Right. Right. And it's like, they are, I guess, in terms of, like, geopolitical events, literally the biggest problem.
Yeah.
That does not mean they are the only important problem, or the only problem worth addressing in a book, in a series that spans so many pages with thousands of characters able to address various things.
Yeah, also Rand and all of the people around him are not robots. They don't have to, like, be programmed to do a single task at once.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You are capable of doing multiple things. Rand, you're literally, like, in residence in this manor house, doing nothing until these people showed up. The last, like, 6 times we've caught up with you, it has been at the beginning you've just been, like, laying in bed with men.
Yeah.
It's really hard to be on your side, bud.
Yeah.
When you clearly have such, like, a serious disinterest in doing anything beneficial for the world.
Right.
And we're supposed to be, like, excited that, I don't know, Rand's broaching the topics of negotiations with the Shanshin, because that'll lead to something. But frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I don't give a damn either, because, and I feel like I need to preempt myself, because so many people on the internet love to say that everyone is too critical of Rand when he's obviously dealing with mental health issues. My points are, 1, dealing with mental health issues is no excuse to behave badly to the people around you. I understand that sometimes it happens and you can't always control the blast zone, but that does not mean that it is not ultimately your responsibility to behave as well as you can in any situation.
And take responsibility for your actions.
Yeah, and take responsibility for your actions. Like, you can't always, but most of the time you need to do your best. And Rand is not even attempting that. And 2, again, just in terms of logistics, he can be like, Cadswan, do something. I am not mentally and emotionally able to handle this, and you are supposed to be my second in command, so I'm asking you to... I can't do it. I'm giving you full power of attorney to make whatever decisions you see fit at this point. But he will not take responsibility on his own, and he will not delegate. So ultimately, I have absolutely no sympathy for him.
So, thanks everyone for listening.
This is a bit of a bummer-oo.
At least we had some, like, jokes about the Queen's dead body or whatever. Thanks to our patrons on Patreon, our followers on social media, and of course thanks to Glenna McKenzie for our theme song.
Yeah. We did it.
Oh, we sure did it, folks.
And I have a purely ridiculous sign-off
to
send
I
us
can't wait.
So first I need to, like, paint a little bit of a picture. So I go on walks every couple of days as part of, like, the conditioning plan for my sick little body. And I was on a walk the other day, and I really, really do feel like I need to paint you guys a picture of what I was wearing in order to get the full effect of what happened. So I look ridiculous when I'm walking. I have these, like, New Balance dad sneakers that are, like, purple and orange, and they're specifically designed to keep my feet from rolling inwards. And I had on these, like, bright pink bike shorts and a fleece that I got for my company's 50th anniversary that's embroidered with our bright yellow logo. I have a bulky knee brace on my left knee and a denim hat that says End Homelessness on it that I got from a work conference. So I just, like, who is this person put together in just scraps of fabric? And there's a pickleball court at our complex that I want to get inside of so that I can skate there because it's a flat surface. And we allegedly have a key fob that opens this, but I have yet to figure out how it works. So on my walk the other day, I was like, I'm going to try this again. This is like the 4th time I've tried to get the pickleball court to unlock. So I go over and I'm, like, using our key fob and, like, rattling the door. And eventually I notice the other side of the, like, electric lock is broken. And I'm like, oh, maybe if I, like, push it back. It's not broken. It's, like, hanging off. I'm like, maybe if I push it back in, then it will work. I set off an alarm at the pickleball court. And it was so loud. It was, like, 8 in the morning. I couldn't get it to turn off, so I just had to, like, leave in the pickleball court. I could hear it. It was so loud. I could hear it through the rest of my walk until I finally just went back inside our townhome, and I don't know how it got turned off.
Sally has remarkable restraint in not telling me things.
I know, I was like, I have to see
Use the first time. How did you not tell me that?
Literally, I saw you, this was on Monday, and I saw you and I was like, I can't. I have to hold it in. I have to hold it inside my heart. How I burglarized the pickleball court. God, that's so good. So anyway, and I'm sure the people in the townhomes nearby were looking out like, who is this elderly woman? Anyway.
Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.